Daddy, why is Mommy sleeping in your bed? Ethan. Miller stopped breathing. He was already standing at the edge of his own bed, staring at the woman beside him. Claire Donovan, his boss. The most powerful woman in the hospital wearing his dead wife's robe. Dry blood on his sleeve. No memory of last night. Not 1 second of it. He didn't hear Lily open the door. He didn't hear her small feet on the floor. He only heard that question, and it detonated inside his chest like something that had been buried there for a long time, just waiting. If your heart is already pounding, hit subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Stay with me. It gets so much harder. The clock said 6:12 a.m. Ethan Miller was sitting on the edge of his bed with his shoes still on, and that was the first wrong thing. He never slept in his shoes, never, not once in 34 years. But there they were, laces tied, like he'd never intended to stop moving, and something had simply switched him off mid-stride. He looked at his right sleeve. Blood. Dry. Brown at the edges, nearly black at the center. A smear, not a gash. Not his own. He thought his arms were clean, no cuts, no marks, but thinking. Not my blood, only opened a worse door. Whose then? From where? From when? He couldn't answer any of it, because he could not remember last night. Not a frame, not a sound, not a smell. The last thing he could place with certainty was the hospital corridor at 4:30 p.m., the fluorescent lights humming the squeak of his own shoes on the linoleum. And then a wall. Smooth black total, like a film that had simply run out. He turned his head slowly. Claire Donovan. She was lying on her side on Grace's pillow, one hand curled under her cheek, breathing slow and even, dark hair loose. She was wearing Grace's robe, the cream silk one, the one that had hung on the back of the bathroom door for 14 months, untouched, unwashed, unmoved, because Ethan could not bring himself to do a single thing to it. Because Grace had worn it the morning of the last day he'd seen her alive, and some part of him, the part that still hadn't fully accepted the math of her absence, needed it to stay exactly as she'd left it. Claire Donovan was wearing it like she'd picked it off a rack. Ethan stood up, the room tilted. He grabbed the doorframe, held on, breathed. Think. You have to think. His phone was face down on the dresser. He crossed to it and turned it over. 17 missed calls. 6 from Sandra next door. 4 from an unknown number. 3 from the hospital main line. 4 from a contact saved only as N. No memory of saving anyone as N. No memory of a lot of things right now. He was still reading the screen when the knock came. 3 knocks. Small. Soft. The knock of a 7-year-old who had been taught to knock but hadn't quite learned how to wait. Daddy. Everything in Ethan's body lurched sideways. He crossed the room in 4 steps and pressed his back flat against the door before Lily could push it open. His heart was slamming. His palms were against the wood like he was trying to hold the door against something with enormous weight on the other side. Hey, Bug. His voice came out almost normal. Almost. Why is Mommy's music box playing? He stopped. He stood completely still with his back against the bedroom door, and he listened. Actually listened, past his own breathing, past the roar in his ears, and Grace's music box was playing. Down the hall, in Lily's room. The thin silver melody threading through the walls, quiet as a held breath. It had not played once in 14 months. The mechanism had seized sometime in the weeks after the funeral, and Ethan had told himself he'd fix it and never did. And eventually the silence of it became its own kind of presence in the house, the music that wasn't there anymore, like so many other things. It was playing now. Daddy, are you awake? Yeah, he swallowed. I'm awake. Give me 1 second, okay? He turned back to the room. Claire's eyes were open. She was looking at the ceiling with the careful stillness of a person who is not calm, but is very good at appearing calm. Then she turned her head and looked at Ethan, and whatever she saw in his face made her sit up slowly. My daughter, Ethan said very low, very fast. She's right outside. I need you to not move and not make a sound. Can you do that? Claire looked down at herself, looked at the robe. Something moved through her expression. Recognition, confusion, a flash of something that in a less composed person would have been horror. She looked back at him. "Who are you?" she asked. "Ethan Miller. I'm a billing coordinator on the 3rd floor. You approved my department transfer 8 months ago." A beat. "Why am I in your house?" "I have no idea," he said. "That's the problem. 5 minutes, please." She nodded. One short, tight nod. He slipped through the door and pulled it shut behind him. Lily was standing in the hallway in her fox pajamas, hair loose from sleep, looking up at him with Grace's eyes. She had Grace's exact eyes, the shape, the depth, the particular darkness that held so much without saying anything. Every morning, Ethan looked at his daughter, and the resemblance hit him fresh like it hadn't happened the morning before. "The music box woke me up," Lily said. "I know. I heard it." "Did you fix it?" "I didn't fix it, no." She thought about this seriously, the way she thought about everything. "Daddy, you always say machines don't fix themselves. You say things only get better when someone actually works on them. I know I say that. So who fixed it?" He had nothing. He looked at his daughter's face, and he had absolutely nothing. "Let's get breakfast first," he said. "Then we'll figure it out together." "Together," she repeated like she was locking in a contract. 7 years old, and she already understood the binding power of the word. He got her to the kitchen. He poured her cereal. The colored rings, the ones she'd chosen herself at the grocery store 2 weeks ago, very serious about it, very decisive, because Lily approached cereal selection with the gravity of important decisions. He put a banana on the side, poured orange juice, set it all in front of her, while his mind ran through 17 different terrible scenarios simultaneously. And his hands didn't shake, because he refused to let them shake, because she was watching, because she was always watching. "Your eyes are red," she said. "I didn't sleep well." "You look like when you're trying not to be scared." He looked at her over the counter. "What does that look like?" "Like right now," she said simply, and put a spoonful of cereal in her mouth. He almost shattered right there. He held himself together with both hands, metaphorically speaking, and said, "I'm fine, Bug. Eat your breakfast." He walked back down the hall. He needed to pass Lily's room. The music box had gone quiet again, but the door was open and he couldn't not look in. He crossed to the dresser. The music box sat where it always sat, painted with forget-me-nots, the small ballerina frozen on the inside lid. He touched the lid, opened it. The mechanism gave exactly 4 notes. The opening bars of the lullaby Grace used to hum over Lily's head in the dark, and then went silent, like something that had said exactly what it meant to say. Then he saw the phone. On the dresser, right beside the music box. Charging cable still attached, plugged into the strip behind the dresser. Grace's phone. He knew this phone. He knew the cracked screen, the case she'd chosen, navy blue with a small white star in the corner. Because Lily had picked it out, he knew it the way you know the face of someone you have memorized. This phone had been in a shoebox on the top shelf of his closet for 14 months. He had not taken it out. He had opened that closet exactly 4 times since the funeral, and had never moved. The box had never even touched it, because some things you preserve not out of health, but out of the simple inability to do otherwise. He picked it up. Fully charged. His thumb hovered over the screen, and it lit up on its own, and he saw the notification, and his blood went cold from the inside out. 1 new voicemail. Received 11:47 p.m. last night. Caller ID Grace. His own wife's number. Calling her own phone. At 11:47 last night, while Ethan had no memory of where he was or what he was doing. He pressed play. He told himself it would be a glitch. A recycled number. A mistake in the system. And then Grace's voice came through the speaker. Her real voice. Warm. A little breathless. The voice she used when she was trying not to let you hear that she was frightened. "Ethan, if you're hearing this, don't trust the hospital. And don't let them take Lily." Silence. End of message. Ethan stood in his daughter's room with his dead wife's phone in his hand, and the music box played its 4 notes again, and he didn't move for a very long time. When he walked back into the bedroom, Claire was sitting upright on the edge of the bed. She had taken the robe off and folded it carefully, placed it across the foot of the bed with both hands, which Ethan registered somewhere beneath everything else as an act of unexpected consideration, and she was back in her dress from the night before. Wrinkled, makeup thinned and faint. She looked like a woman who had been somewhere she didn't choose to be and was now doing the only thing left available functioning. She had her phone in her hands. She was scrolling. "Tell me what you remember," Ethan said. She looked up. "You first." "Hospital, 4:30. After that, nothing." "Gala," she said. "Meridian Hotel rooftop ballroom. I arrived at 7. I spoke to several board members. I had 1 glass of wine." She held up a single finger, precise like the number mattered. 1. "And then I was speaking with Mark Ellison near the bar and—" she exhaled through her nose. "And then I was here, in your room, 10 minutes ago." "Mark Ellison," Ethan said. "We were arguing. He didn't like something I said about the quarterly audit. I told him I was going to look into the vendor contracts personally." Her jaw tightened slightly. "He handed me a drink. I remember it touching my lips and then—" "He drugged you." "I don't have proof of—" "You woke up in a stranger's bed in your employee's dead wife's robe," Ethan said. "I woke up with someone else's blood on my sleeve and no memory of the night. That's not a coincidence. That's construction." She looked at him for a long moment. She was recalibrating. He could see it the way smart people look when new information rearranges their map. "Grace," she said carefully. "Before she died, she came to me." Ethan went completely still. She had a spreadsheet, billing codes, treatments logged in the system for patients who were never actually treated. Payments to vendors I couldn't verify existed. Claire set her phone down on her knee. "I told her to bring me documentation. I told her to be careful. I told her not to go to anyone else until I had a chance to look at it properly." The silence lasted 4 full seconds. "And then she died," Ethan said. "And then she died," Claire said. The word murder did not enter the room in any spoken form, but it was there. It sat between them on the bed where neither of them had chosen to sleep, and it was enormous, and neither of them looked directly at it. Ethan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. He turned the screen toward Claire without a word. "You should have let your wife stay buried." The color left Claire's face in a single clean sweep. "Someone has your new number," she said. "No one has this number. I got a new phone 8 months ago. It's not in any system." "Someone put it in their system," she said quietly. "Ethan, they've been planning this. This isn't last night's decision. The forged billing records, the staged photos, whatever happened to us last night required weeks of preparation." "Then Grace got too close," he said. "And you got too close. And someone needed both of you discredited before." He stopped, because it landed all at once, the full shape of it clean and terrible. "You discredited," he said, "and me implicated. Your reputation destroyed by a scandal, my name on missing files. Any investigation you tried to run becomes about whether you're sleeping with your subordinates. Any accusation I make becomes the word of a grieving man with blood on his hands." Claire stared at him. "They didn't just drug us," Ethan said. "They turned us into the story, so Grace's story disappears." Before Claire could respond, before either of them could breathe through what that meant, the knock came at the front door. Firm. Measured. The knock of people who represent an institution. Ethan walked to the door, looked through the peephole. 2 officers, one with a clipboard, one with his hands loose at his sides in a way that was its own kind of message. He looked back down the hall. Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had her laptop open. She had her reading glasses on. She looked at him across the length of the hallway and gave him one small, tight nod. He turned back to the door. "Don't trust the hospital." Grace's voice. "Last night, 11:47 p.m. He opened the door. "Mr. Miller." The officer with the clipboard didn't smile. "We have some questions about hospital records reported missing last night. Your access card was logged at the records room at 11:52 p.m. He paused. Do you remember being at the hospital last night? Ethan looked at the officer. 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Grace's voicemail. Come in, Ethan said, and behind him in the kitchen, Claire Donovan pulled up the vendor payment files. $430,000. Her forged signature on everyone, and started building the only thing that might save them both. Evidence. Before someone built more of it against them. The officer's name was Reyes. He said it once, didn't offer a card, didn't sit down when Ethan gestured toward the kitchen table. He just stood in the middle of the living room with his clipboard and his partner, a younger man named Cho, who hadn't said a word yet, and looked at Ethan the way people look at someone they've already decided something about. Your access card, Reyes said again. Logged at the hospital records room. 11:52 p.m. last night. I heard you the first time, Ethan said. Do you remember being there? I told you, I don't remember much about last night. Reyes wrote something on his clipboard. The scratch of the pen was very loud. How much did you drink? I wasn't at the gala. We didn't say anything about a gala. The room went tight. Ethan felt it, the precise surgical quality of that response. The way Reyes had let the silence sit for exactly 1 second after Ethan said gala before pointing at it. This man was good at his job. And someone had sent him here already knowing what to look for. The hospital charity gala, Ethan said carefully. It was last night. I know about it because my department received a memo. I was not there. I was home with my daughter. Until what time? She goes to bed at 8:30. And after that? I was here. Anyone who can verify that? The answer was no. And Reyes already knew the answer was no, which was why he was asking. From the kitchen came the soft sound of Claire typing. Neither officer had commented on her presence yet, which meant they'd seen her when they walked in and had chosen not to acknowledge it, which was its own kind of strategy. Let the subject wonder what you know. Let the silence do the pressure work. Mr. Miller, Cho said, first words from him, quiet, almost gentle. We're not here to accuse you of anything. We just need to account for the records. A file went missing from the archive room, and your card was the last one scanned. My card was used, Ethan said. That's different from saying I used it. Reyes looked up from the clipboard. Something shifted in his expression. Not suspicion exactly, but recalibration. Like he hadn't expected that particular distinction from the man in the rumpled shirt with the red eyes. Someone had your card, Cho asked. Someone used my card, Ethan said. Whether they had it or cloned it or walked through an open door behind me on a night I can't account for, I don't know. But I know I didn't take any files. What files are you suggesting someone else took? Reyes said. I don't know what's missing. You haven't told me. Another pause. Reyes wrote something else. Cho looked at his phone, then put it back in his pocket. We may need you to come in for a formal statement, Reyes said. Am I being charged with anything? No. Then I'll need to arrange care for my daughter before I go anywhere. Ethan held the man's gaze. You have my number. Call ahead next time. It was a dismissal, quiet, polite, with steel underneath. Reyes looked at him for a long 3 seconds, then nodded once and capped his pen. Cho was already moving toward the door. At the threshold, Reyes turned back. One more thing. Claire Donovan, the hospital's chief operating officer. You know her. She's my superior, Ethan said. Everyone on the 3rd floor knows who she is. Her car was parked outside your house this morning. Neighbor across the street noticed it around 6 a.m. She's inside, Ethan said flatly. You walked past her. If you want to speak with her, you can call her office and schedule an appointment. Reyes looked at him for one more long moment. Then he left. Ethan closed the door. He stood with his hand on the knob forehead, nearly touching the wood, and breathed. From the kitchen. That was well handled. He turned around. Claire was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, laptop tucked under one arm. She had heard every word. Of course she had. They already knew you were here, he said. Yes. Someone told them. Someone told them just enough, she said. Not everything. If they had everything, we'd be having a different kind of morning. He walked toward her. What did you find? She set the laptop on the kitchen table and turned it to face him. 6 payments, $430,000 total spread over 11 weeks, all routed through the Children's Surgery Charity Fund, all approved with my login credentials. She pointed to the screen. These 3 cleared while I was at a medical conference in Denver. I was on a flight when 2 of them processed. So you couldn't have approved them. I couldn't have approved them, she said. But my digital signature is on every single one. And the vendors, she shook her head. I've been trying to pull up the business registrations. 2 of them don't exist. One has a registration address that's a parking garage in Newark. One was dissolved 18 months ago. Shell companies, Ethan said. Someone built the infrastructure months before they needed it. This was not improvised. She closed the laptop. Grace found the thread, Ethan. She pulled it, and they killed her before she could unravel enough of it to matter. He didn't answer. He walked to the kitchen counter and stood there with his back to her, gripping the edge of the counter with both hands, and he was quiet for long enough that Claire said his name. I'm fine, he said. You're not. I know I'm not. I said I'm fine anyway. He turned around. What do we do? We need the original documentation Grace compiled. If she had a spreadsheet, physical copies, backup files, anything. The police will have her laptop. Did she have anything at home? An external drive, printed copies, Ethan thought. He thought about Grace at the kitchen table at midnight, the way she worked when she was onto something methodical. Quiet, the kind of focus that went so deep she'd forget to eat. She kept notebooks, paper ones, the kind with the black and white composition covers. She didn't trust cloud storage, didn't trust digital trails on anything sensitive. Notebooks, he said. She kept everything in notebooks. Where are they? I don't. He stopped. He pressed his fingers to his eyes. I packed her office things after she died. There were boxes. I put them in storage at my sister's place in Trenton. I haven't opened them. We need to open them. I know. Today. I know, Claire. His voice was harder than he meant it to be. He pulled it back. I know. Give me a minute. She gave him the minute. To her credit, she actually gave it to him. Stood there, without talking, without typing, without doing anything except waiting, which was not. Ethan suspected her natural mode. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. Same one that had texted him earlier. He answered it. Silence for 2 seconds. Then a woman's voice, low, fast, precise. Don't say my name. Don't say anything identifying. Just listen. A breath. I work in hospital administration. I've been watching what's happening to those billing records for 8 months. Grace Miller contacted me 3 weeks before she died. I gave her documents. I think someone knows I did. Another breath, shakier this time. I need to know if you found anything she left behind. Because if you didn't, everything I handed her is gone. And if it's gone, the voice stopped. Mr. Miller, I have a daughter too. I need to know I didn't get Grace killed for nothing. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. Where are you? Not on this line. There's a coffee shop on Birch Street 2 blocks from the hospital. The one with the green awning. 1 hour. A pause. Come alone. And if I see anyone with you that I don't recognize, I'm gone, and you never hear from me again. The line went dead. Ethan lowered the phone. Claire was already reading his face. Who was that? Someone who was helping Grace. He looked at her. Someone who's scared. How scared? Scared enough to call a stranger at 7 in the morning. Scared enough to ask if her information got Grace killed. He pocketed the phone. She wants to meet. 1 hour. I'm coming. She said alone. She said she'd leave if she saw someone she didn't recognize. Claire said. She doesn't know me. She might recognize my name, but she won't know my face if I'm not standing next to you. She picked up her laptop. I'll be at a separate table. You won't look at me. We won't interact. But I need to hear what she says. Ethan thought about arguing. He thought about it for about 4 seconds. "Fine," he said. "But you walk in separately, 5 minutes after me." Agreed. He called Sandra, asked her to keep Lily through lunch, and Sandra, bless her again, said of course. Said Lily was already helping her water the garden, said, "Take all the time you need without asking a single question that would have required Ethan to lie to her." He hung up and thought about his daughter watering Sandra's garden in the morning light, completely unaware that her father was standing in a kitchen trying to figure out who had murdered her mother and staged his arrest. "Don't let them take Lily. We need to go," he said. They took separate cars. The coffee shop was narrow and warm and smelled like roasted beans and old wood. Ethan arrived 7 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he didn't touch, and sat at a table near the back where he could see the door without being directly visible from the street. He sat and he waited, and he thought about Grace's voice on that phone. Don't trust the hospital. He had worked at that hospital for 6 years. He had taken Lily to its pediatric wing twice, once for a broken collarbone when she was 5, once for a respiratory infection last winter. Grace had worked there for 9 years. She had believed in it, the way people believe in institutions when those institutions have given them purpose. And someone inside it had taken her apart piece by piece, called her unstable, called her unreliable, and then made sure she couldn't tell anyone what she'd found. The door opened. The woman who walked in was maybe 40, South Asian, with the kind of contained tension that comes from months of being careful in a place where being careful is survival. She scanned the room, once fast practiced, and found Ethan without hesitation. She sat down across from him without ordering anything. "Nora Patel," she said quietly. "I'm in hospital finance. Grace came to me because I process the vendor payments. I see the numbers before anyone else." "What did you give her?" "Printed billing records. 8 months of them. Treatments coded and billed that were never actually ordered by any physician on staff." She clasped her hands on the table. They were very still, but the stillness was effortful. "Children's surgeries mostly. Pediatric cardiac procedures. The kind that cost $400,000-500,000 and that donors specifically fundraise for. Someone was billing the charity fund for surgeries that were either never performed or were performed on patients whose actual insurance covered the cost separately, so the fund got billed twice. How much total? Conservatively, over 18 months, somewhere between $2 and $3 million. Ethan sat back. "And Grace had proof," he said. "Grace had the thread. I gave her the numbers. She was going to cross-reference them against the actual patient records, match the billing codes to the charts, prove the procedures never happened." Nora's jaw tightened. "She called me the night before she died. She said she'd found something in the patient charts that was worse than the money. She said, and I remember this exactly, she said, 'Nora, some of these children I can't find any record that they were ever admitted. Not just the procedures. The patients themselves might not exist.'" The coffee shop noise continued around them. Cups, low conversation. The hiss of the espresso machine, ordinary sounds that now felt like they belonged to a different world. "Ghost patients," Ethan said. "Completely fabricated. Names, insurance numbers, procedure codes, everything. Built to funnel money out of the charity fund into the shell companies." Nora leaned forward slightly. "Do you understand what that means? Someone didn't just steal from sick children. They invented sick children to steal from donors who thought they were helping real ones." Ethan's hands were flat on the table. He pressed them down, felt the solidity of the wood used it. "Who built them?" he said. "Who had access to create patient records at that level?" "You need board-level administrative access," Nora said. "And you need someone in medical records to either not look or actively cooperate." She paused. "Mark Ellison has board-level access. He's had it for 11 years. And the head of medical records." She stopped, looked at the door, looked back. "His son-in-law manages 2 of the shell vendor companies." There it was, clean and devastating. "You have documentation of all this," Ethan said. "I made backups, not on hospital servers, external drives encrypted. I've been building a file for 4 months." Her voice dropped lower. "I was going to go to the state attorney's office." But then Grace died, and it was ruled accidental, and 2 days later, someone went through my desk at work. They didn't take anything, because I don't keep anything there anymore, but they went through it. She met his eyes. I have a 7-year-old daughter, Mr. Miller, and I am terrified. You should be, Ethan said. Not unkindly, just honestly. These people built a $2 to $3 million fraud on invented sick children. They killed my wife. They are not careful because they are cautious. They are careful because they are practiced. Nora absorbed that. So what do we do? You hold on to those drives, he said. You don't go to the hospital today. You call in sick, you go somewhere your daughter is safe, and you wait to hear from me. And you? I'm going to find what Grace left behind, he said. She kept notebooks. She didn't trust digital records. If she cross-referenced those billing codes with the patient charts, she wrote it down somewhere. And if she wrote it down... His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. A text from an unknown number different from the first one. New number, but the style identical. No greeting, no name. We know about Birch Street. You have until tonight to make the right choice. After that, the choice gets made for you. His jaw tightened. He looked up. Nora had read it upside down. Her face had gone the color of old paper. They're watching you, she whispered. They've been watching me since this morning, he said. He was scanning the room without moving his head, a skill he hadn't known he possessed until this moment. Or they put a tracker on my car. Or they have someone on my phone carrier. He texted Claire under the table one word outside. Now. What do I do? Nora said. Go out the back. Does this place have a back exit? I don't. Find out. He stood up slowly like a man who'd finished his coffee and had nowhere urgent to be. Don't contact me from any number they might have. Buy a prepaid phone. Text me from that. And Nora, he paused. Whatever you have on those drives, make a second copy. Today, before anything else. She nodded. Her hands were no longer still. He walked to the door. Claire was 2 steps from the entrance when he pushed through it. She read his face in about half a second. They know we were inside, he said quietly, walking past her without stopping. She fell into step beside him. Tracked how? I don't know yet. My car, my phone, someone watching it, doesn't matter. They know. He unlocked his car, got in, and Claire got into the passenger seat without being asked. The woman inside her name is Nora Patel. She's in hospital finance. She gave Grace the billing records. Is she credible? She's terrified, and she's been building a file for 4 months on her own time on encrypted drives, Ethan said. Yes, she's credible. He told Claire what Nora had said: the ghost patients, the fabricated children, the shell companies, Mark Ellison's board, accessed the son-in-law. Claire didn't interrupt. She sat perfectly still with her hands in her lap, and she listened. And when he finished, there was a silence that had real weight to it. Ghost children, she said, to drain a charity fund built on donor grief. Parents giving money because they lost a child or almost lost one or couldn't afford to save one. Ethan's voice was even. He had to keep it even. Someone looked at that grief and decided to monetize it. Mark, she said quietly. Not a question. Mark built the architecture, Ethan said. But this is too large for one person. He had help, board members at least, maybe more. He started the car. I need to get to Trenton. Grace's notebooks are at my sister's place. The police are going to want you reachable. The police, Ethan said, are working from a script someone else wrote. He looked at her. The access card log, the missing files. They weren't investigating a crime. They were delivering a message. We can put you at the scene whenever we want. Stay quiet, or we put you there permanently. Claire was quiet for a moment. You believe Grace was murdered? Her phone called her own voicemail at 11:47 last night from a phone that's been in my closet for 14 months, Ethan said. My access card was used at 11:52. Someone moved both of us like pieces on a board last night, and I don't know what they needed us to do or witness or be blamed for. Yes, I believe Grace was murdered. And I believe last night was the beginning of whatever comes next. He put the car in drive. The question isn't whether I'm in this. I'm already in it. The question is whether I stay in it, sitting down or standing up. He pulled out of the lot. Claire reached into her bag and removed a second phone, small prepaid, still in its packaging. She looked at him sideways. I bought this on the way here, she said. From a pharmacy 2 blocks over. Cash. He glanced at it. While you were parking. She started opening the packaging. I've been in boardrooms with people like Mark Ellison for 20 years, Ethan. I know how they move, and I know that this morning... Her voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. This morning was not the beginning of this. The beginning was the day Grace walked into my office with that spreadsheet and I told her to wait. I told her to be careful. She pulled the phone free of its packaging. I should have burned it to the ground that afternoon, and I didn't. Because protecting my position felt more important than protecting the truth. She looked at him direct and without flinching. That's on me. Whatever comes next, I want you to know that I know that. Ethan said nothing for a moment. The road moved under them. You can carry that later, he said finally. Right now, I need you functional. I am functional. Good. He drove. Because Grace's notebooks are in Trenton. Nora's drives are somewhere we don't know yet, and someone just told us we have until tonight. Until tonight to do what? Make the right choice. He said it the way you say something that means its own opposite. Which means hand over whatever we have, walk away, and let them finish burying Grace's truth with the rest of her. Claire looked at the prepaid phone in her hands. And the wrong choice. We keep going, Ethan said, and we don't stop. She turned the phone on. The screen lit up new and clean and untraceable. Then we keep going, she said. Neither of them spoke again for the next 4 miles. Ethan drove and thought about a bracelet he didn't know about yet. Small plastic, the kind they put on children's wrists in hospital wards, sitting inside a music box in a room where a 7-year-old girl slept and still talked to her stuffed rabbit so it wouldn't worry. He didn't know about the bracelet yet. But Grace had left it there for him to find. She had planned for exactly this moment, this fear, this crossroads, and she had left him a map. He just hadn't found all the pieces. His sister Rachel didn't ask questions either. That was the thing about the women in Ethan's life. The ones who actually loved him had learned somewhere along the way that there were moments when questions were the wrong tool. Rachel opened the door, looked at her brother's face, looked at the woman standing 2 steps behind him and said, "The boxes are in the garage, 3rd row labeled G office." Then she went back inside and put a pot of coffee on. The garage smelled like cardboard and old winter coats. Ethan found the boxes in under a minute. Grace had labeled everything always because Grace believed that chaos was just organization that hadn't been attempted yet. He pulled the 3rd box from the top, set it on the hood of Rachel's car, and opened it. Notebooks. 6 of them, the black and white composition kind, exactly as he'd remembered. Stacked in the order Grace kept everything chronological precise, the most recent one on top. He picked up the top one and opened it. Her handwriting hit him like a physical thing. He stood there for 3 full seconds, just looking at the loops and angles of it, the way she pressed harder on her G's, the small star she drew in the margin whenever she found something that mattered. He had forgotten about the stars. He had forgotten, and now he remembered, and the remembering was a kind of pain that had no clean location in the body. Ethan. Claire's voice was quiet, not rushed, just present. He turned the page. The notebook was dated. Grace had dated every entry, another habit, and the most recent entries were from the last 6 weeks of her life. Page after page of billing codes, patient ID numbers, procedure, classifications, cross-referenced in 3 different colors of ink: green for verified, red for unverifiable, blue for what she called ghosts. The blue entries filled the last 12 pages. She found 41 of them, Ethan said, reading. 41 ghost patients, names, insurance numbers, full procedure codes, cardiac surgeries, neurological interventions, some of them multiple procedures per patient. He turned a page. She cross-referenced the names against the state patient registry. None of them appear. Not one. Claire was reading over his shoulder. The insurance numbers. She checked those too. He pointed to a column of red-inked notations. Fabricated. The formats are correct, they'd pass a casual audit, but the actual policy numbers don't correspond to any active plans in the regional database. She built the entire case herself, Claire said. In a composition notebook, in 6 of them. Ethan carefully set the first notebook aside and picked up the second. More billing records. Then the third, this one was different. Less structured. More like thinking out loud the way Grace wrote when she was working through something that didn't have a clean shape yet. He found the entry dated 3 days before she died. He read it once silently. Then he read it again because the first time through he couldn't fully absorb it. Claire, he said. She leaned in. The entry read, Mark E. has authorization access to patient record creation confirmed through IT-log. I pulled from the secondary server. He didn't do this alone. Someone in medical records is actively maintaining the ghost files, updating them quarterly, so they don't trigger the dormancy flag. This is ongoing. This is not old money. They are still doing this right now. I need to get into room 914 before they rotate the paper backups. If I can get the physical records, the entry ended mid-sentence. The pen line trailed off the page like she'd been interrupted or had stopped herself or had simply run out of time. Room 914, Claire said. She mentioned it on the voicemail too, Ethan said. She said don't trust the hospital. She said... He stopped. He pulled out his phone and played the voicemail on speaker right there in the garage. Grace's voice filling the cold air between the cardboard boxes. Ethan, if you're hearing this, don't trust the hospital. And don't let them take Lily. He stood there after it ended, and his jaw was tight and his eyes were dry because he had already cried. For Grace had cried until he was hollowed out, and what was left now was not grief exactly. It was something harder. Something with edges. Room 914 isn't a patient room, Claire said slowly. The 9th floor is administrative. It's been administrative for years. Most of it is storage and overflow offices. She was quiet for a moment. 914 specifically I'd have to check, but I think that's a locked archive room. Paper records, pre-digitization files that were never scanned. And post-digitization files that someone doesn't want scanned, Ethan said. They looked at each other. We need to get into that room, he said. The hospital will have security on every access point after last night. My keycard has almost certainly been flagged. Nora, Ethan said. He pulled out the prepaid phone he'd bought one of his own at the same pharmacy. Different register cash, and texted the number Nora had given him at the coffee shop before they parted. Room 914, 9th floor. Do you have access or know someone who does critical? The reply came in 40 seconds. I have a master key for the archive level. I kept it when they reassigned me from records 3 years ago. Nobody asked for it back. But Ethan, if we go in there tonight, we are committing a crime. He typed back. Grace committed the crime of finding the truth, and they killed her for it. Are you in? A longer pause this time. 30 seconds, a minute. Then I'm in. Midnight, staff parking level B south stairwell. He showed Claire the screen. She read it, nodded once. We have until midnight, she said. What do we do until then? We read every page of every one of these notebooks, he said. And then we make sure that what's in them exists somewhere that can't be burned. They spent the afternoon at Rachel's kitchen table. Rachel brought coffee and sandwiches and asked no questions and kept her children in the backyard with admirable completeness. Ethan and Claire read through all 6 notebooks, and Claire photographed every page with her prepaid phone, and Ethan typed a summary document on Rachel's old laptop, and neither of them spoke much except to point out something significant or ask each other to confirm a number. It was in its way the most intimate thing Ethan had ever done with someone he barely knew. There is a particular closeness that comes from sitting across a table from another person and working through evidence of someone's murder together. It bypasses the usual social architecture entirely. Around 4 in the afternoon, Ethan found the entry he hadn't expected to find. It was in Notebook 5, dated about 5 weeks before Grace died. Not billing codes this time, personal. The handwriting was slightly different, faster, less controlled, the way she wrote late at night when she was tired and feeling something strongly. I told Nora today to keep the drive safe. I don't know what they'll do when they realize how far I've gotten. Mark looked at me differently this week, not like a colleague, like a liability. I know that look. I've seen it on people right before they start dismantling you. I'm scared. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But I keep thinking about the donors. The people who gave because they lost a child. Parents sitting in a hospital chapel begging God for a miracle and writing a check because they wanted to believe it would save someone else's. And these people, these men took it and called it revenue. If something happens to me, I need Ethan to understand I didn't stay quiet to protect myself. I stayed quiet because they threatened his job, his insurance, Lily's coverage. I bought time. I needed more time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I ran out of it. Ethan read the entry. He read it again. And then he set the notebook down very carefully on the table, stood up and walked to the window, and he stood there with his back to Claire for a while. She didn't say anything. She gave him the space. When he turned back around, his face was different. Not harder, that wasn't quite it. Quieter. The way a person's face goes when they have finished arguing with something and have decided instead to act. She stayed quiet to protect me, he said. Yes. She had the evidence. She could have gone public earlier. She didn't because she was protecting my job and Lily's insurance. His voice was level, careful, and it killed her. She was trying to protect her family, Claire said. That's not a failure. That's love. It's also what they were counting on, he said. They knew she had someone to protect. That's why the threat worked. He sat back down. They're doing the same thing to me right now. That text said, make the right choice. The right choice in their language is protect Lily by shutting up. They think I'll make the same calculation Grace did. Will you? He looked at her across the table, covered in his dead wife's notebooks. Grace made that calculation, and they killed her anyway. The calculation was wrong. The protection was an illusion. He picked up the notebook. The only actual protection Lily has is the truth being too public and too documented to bury. Claire was quiet. Then she reached across the table and put her hand briefly over his. Not romantic, nothing like that. Just human. Present. Okay, she said. Tonight, then. They got to the hospital at 11:40. Nora was already there in the stairwell, wearing dark clothes and holding a key ring that had exactly one key on it. A plain metal key, old style, the kind that opens physical locks on physical doors. I looked up the room on the archive manifest, she said without greeting because they were past greetings. 914 was reclassified from general storage to restricted administrative files 8 years ago. The reclassification was authorized by the board. Guess who signed the authorization? Ellison, Ethan said. Ellison. She started up the stairs. They followed. The room hasn't been logged as accessed in 14 months. Nobody goes in, nobody goes out officially, but the climate control system shows the HVAC to that room cycling every 2 weeks like something's being maintained in there. She reached the 9th floor door. Someone's been going in through a route that bypasses the access log. I don't know how yet. Does it matter right now? Claire said. No, Nora admitted. Right now it just matters that we get in before anyone realizes we're up here. The key turned on the first try. The door opened. The room was dark and smelled of paper and conditioned air. Nora found the light switch fluorescent flickering once before it held, and they stood in the entrance of a room lined floor to ceiling with shelving units packed with physical files, and on the center table, like someone had expected them, was a cardboard document box with the lid set on top rather than sealed. Someone had been in this room recently. Someone had been preparing something. Ethan lifted the lid. Inside was a single notebook. Composition cover black and white. Not Grace's handwriting on the label. Different handwriting, blocky and deliberate, like someone printing rather than writing, trying not to be identified. The label said, "For Ethan Miller, in case I couldn't." His hands were completely steady when he picked it up. He didn't understand how. He opened the first page. The handwriting inside was Grace's. "Oh God," Nora said softly. This notebook was different from the others. This one was written for him. Not working notes, a letter. One long, continuous letter written in the voice she used when she was talking to him across the kitchen table after Lily was asleep. "Ethan, if you found this, then someone reached you. Nora or Claire or someone I trusted enough to help you find it. I hid this one separately because the others might have been found first. This one has everything the others have organized, so anyone can understand it. All the names, all the numbers, all the proof. But there's something in here the other notebooks don't have." He turned the page. A folded piece of paper. He unfolded it. It was a photograph, printed from a computer, slightly grainy. Security camera footage time-stamped. The loading dock of the hospital, 2:14 a.m. 17 months ago, 3 months before Grace died. In the photograph, 2 men were moving a gurney through the loading dock doors. The gurney had someone on it. The someone was covered, but the coverage was imperfect. One arm was visible, hanging at an angle that said, "unconscious" or "sedated, not sleeping." Ethan stared at the photograph. "Is that who I think it is?" Claire said very quietly. He looked at the figure accompanying the gurney. The man directing the movement face turned 3/4 away from the camera, but visible enough. The particular slope of the shoulders, the suit. "That's Mark Ellison," Ethan said. "And the person on the gurney," Nora said. Grace had written below the photo in her careful hand. This was taken the night a patient named Daniel Reeves was officially recorded as discharged. Daniel Reeves does not exist. He is a ghost patient. But someone was on that gurney. I don't know who. I don't know what happened to them. That is what I am most afraid of. The room went very quiet. This was no longer just about stolen money. It had never been just about stolen money. Ethan realized Grace had known, that had written it in the last notebook, had been afraid of it. The ghost patients weren't just financial constructs. Someone had used the shell patients as cover for something that involved real people. Real bodies. "We need to leave," Claire said. Her voice was stripped of everything except urgency. "Right now. Whatever is in that notebook, we take it. We take photographs of everything in this room, and we leave." Ethan was already photographing the shelves with his prepaid phone, moving fast and systematic the way Grace would have done it. Nora was doing the same from the other end. Claire was on her own prepaid phone typing rapidly. "I have a contact at the Regional Investigative Journalism Unit," she said. "A reporter named Delgado. She's been trying to get me on the record about hospital billing irregularities for 2 years. I've been stonewalling her." A pause. "I'm going to stop stonewalling." "Not yet," Ethan said. "Not until Nora uploads the drives. We need the digital evidence and the physical evidence to land at the same time. If we move too early." "I know." Claire kept typing. "I'm not sending it yet. I'm preparing the message. The second we're clear of this building, I send it." They had been in the room for 11 minutes when Ethan heard the elevator. Not the stairwell. The elevator. The soft mechanical descent of it stopping at the 9th floor. "Someone's here," Nora said. They went still. The elevator opened. Footsteps. Plural. More than 2 people. Moving in the particular unhurried way of people who believe they are in control of a situation. Then, Mark Ellison's voice from the corridor, close enough that Ethan could hear the specific quality of it, smooth, controlled, the voice of a man who has practiced sounding reasonable for 20 years. "Check 914 first. If they found it, we need to know what they took." Ethan looked at the notebook in his hands. Looked at Claire. Looked at Nora. He took Grace's photograph and folded it back inside, closed the notebook, tucked it under his arm. He crossed to the light switch. "When I turn this off," he whispered, "we go to the back of the room. There is a secondary door on the rear wall, archive access. Nora does your key work on it." "I don't know," she breathed. "That's the answer we're working with. he said. "Go." He turned off the light. The room went black. In the darkness, Ethan Miller stood between two women who were terrified, and a door that might not open, holding his dead wife's last letter to him against his chest, listening to the footsteps of the man who had killed her come down the hall. And the thing that moved through him in that moment was not fear. He identified it with some surprise. It was not fear at all. It was clarity. Grace had been alone when she found this. Alone and afraid and protecting everyone but herself. He was not alone. He had the notebook. He had the photograph. He had Nora's drives and Claire's reporter contact and the entire architecture Grace had built in 6 composition notebooks over the last months of her life. They had tried to make him into a man with blood on his sleeve, and no memory and no ground to stand on. But Grace had left him a map, and he had found it. The footsteps stopped outside the door. The handle turned. Ethan did not move. The rear door opened. Ethan didn't know until the handle turned under his palm and the mechanism gave, and cool air hit his face from the service corridor beyond. He didn't celebrate it. He just moved, pulling the door open with one hand and reaching back for Claire with the other, and Claire grabbed Nora's wrist, and the 3 of them went through the door in the same motion. Silent, no light, the notebook pressed against Ethan's ribs like a second heartbeat. He eased the door shut behind them. 2 seconds later, through the wall, he heard the main door to room 914 open. A pause. Then Mark Ellison's voice, flat and controlled. The light was on. Another voice, security, younger, with an edge of uncertainty. "I don't see anyone, sir." I know the light was on. A silence that had weight. "Check the rear access." Ethan was already moving down the service corridor, hand against the wall for orientation. The darkness, total and absolute. Claire and Nora were right behind him, their breathing the only sound he tracked. Somewhere behind them, a flashlight beam cut under the rear door. They found the stairwell by touch. Ethan pushed through it, and they went down. Not to the parking level, too obvious, too exposed, but to the second floor, where the overnight staff was thin, and the corridors connected to the east wing, without passing through a main checkpoint. When they finally stopped in an alcove off the second floor corridor, all 3 of them were breathing hard. "He knows we were there," Nora said. "He suspects," Claire said. "He doesn't know what we took." "He knows about the notebook," Ethan said. "He knew to go to 914 specifically, which means someone's been watching the room." He looked at the notebook still in his hand. "Or he knew Grace left something there and he's been waiting to see who came looking." "A trap," Claire said. "An invitation," Ethan said. "He wanted us to find it. He wanted to catch us in the act of taking it so he could flip the narrative. We broke into a hospital archive. We stole files. We're the criminals." He pressed his back against the wall. The deal he offered this morning through that text, make the right choice. He expected us to be too scared. When we didn't fold, this was plan B. Catch us in the act. Discredit everything we have. "So what do we do?" Nora said. "We're standing in a hospital corridor at midnight with stolen files." "We didn't steal anything," Ethan said. "This notebook is evidence in the murder of my wife. And the second it's in the hands of people who can act on it, it stops being stolen and starts being testimony." He looked at Claire. "How fast can you reach Delgado?" Claire already had the prepaid phone in her hand. "I drafted the message 2 hours ago." "Nora, the drives." "I uploaded everything to an encrypted server before I came here tonight," Nora said. "I have 2 external drives in my car in the parking garage, and the link is already in Delgado's press tip inbox. I sent it anonymously an hour ago." She paused. "I wasn't sure we'd make it out of that room." Ethan looked at her. "You sent it before we went in." "I sent it before we went in," she confirmed. "Because Grace went in alone with nothing behind her and they erased her. I wasn't going to make that same mistake." He looked at this woman, terrified practical, who had spent 4 months building evidence on encrypted drives while going home every night to a 7-year-old daughter who had sent the files before walking into potential danger because she understood that courage without infrastructure was just sacrifice. And he thought Grace chose well when she trusted you. "Send Delgado the message," he said to Claire. Now. Claire pressed send. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed. Delgado had been awake. The reply read, "I've been sitting on Nora's upload for 40 minutes, waiting for a source to go on record. Tell me you're ready." Claire typed back, "I'm ready. I'll give you everything. On record. My name, my title, my signature on those payments, and why it's forged." Tonight. They didn't wait for a second reply. They moved toward the East Wing exit, and behind them, somewhere on the 9th floor, Mark Ellison was standing in a dark archive room, realizing that the thing he'd used as a trap had already sprung in the wrong direction. They made it to Claire's car. The parking garage was quiet. The kind of late-night quiet that has its own specific texture, too. Still, too echoey, every footstep announcing itself. Ethan sat in the back. Nora was in the passenger seat. Claire drove phone propped on the dash, already talking to Delgado through the car speakers, in a voice that was clipped and precise and completely without hesitation. "The vendor payments," Claire said. 6 transactions, 430,000, my forged signature on all of them. I can document the forgery through the access logs. 2 of the payments cleared while I was on a flight to Denver. My boarding pass and hotel check-in are time-stamped. A pause while Delgado spoke. "Yes, ghost patients. 41 confirmed fabrications, each with constructed insurance identities. I also have physical documentation from the archive, a photograph showing Mark Ellison at the loading dock at 2:14 a.m. with an unidentified individual on a gurney." Another pause. "I understand what I'm saying. I've understood it for about 6 hours. Are you recording?" Ethan sat in the back and listened to Claire Donovan dismantle her own career with the focus and precision of a surgeon. No hesitation. No self-pity. She had made a calculation in that kitchen at Rachel's table, and she was executing it at midnight in a parking garage, and she wasn't flinching. He opened Grace's last notebook to the final pages. The letter continued past the evidence, past the names and numbers and billing codes, into something quieter. "I want you to know that I was never as brave as you thought I was. I was scared every single day of the last 3 months. I went to work and smiled at Mark Ellison and said good morning and sat in meetings with him. And the whole time, I was scared in a way that lives in the back of your throat. But I thought about the parents, the ones who gave money because their child almost didn't make it. I thought about one specific mother, I never learned her name, who donated $40,000 to the Children's Surgery Fund last February. I know because I processed the donation acknowledgement. She wrote in the notes field, 'In memory of my daughter Emma who didn't make it, so another child can.' And that money went into a shell account in Newark. I couldn't let that stand, Ethan. I couldn't let Emma's mother's grief get laundered into someone's second vacation home. I just couldn't. I know you're going to want to be angry on my behalf. Please don't stay there too long. Use it, then put it down. Lily needs a father who is present, not one who is preserved in amber by what happened to me. You are the best thing I ever trusted myself to love. Take care of our girl, and take care of the truth. In that order. Grace." The car moved through empty streets. Claire's voice continued in measured, unstoppable detail. Nora sat with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes closed. Not sleeping, praying maybe, or just finally allowing herself to be still after months of motion. Ethan closed the notebook. He did not cry. He had cried in Grace's voice, in her handwriting, in her star margins, and her colored ink, and the sentence that trailed off the page, mid-thought. He had already done that. What he felt now was different. It was the feeling of a man who has been given his instructions by someone who loved him completely and trusted him entirely, and who understands that the only worthy response is to follow them. His phone buzzed. Not the prepaid. His regular phone. Lily. He had completely forgotten. It was nearly 1 a.m. Lily should have been asleep for hours at Sandra's. "What?" he answered. "Bug, what's wrong?" Her voice was sleepy but urgent. "Daddy, I remembered something." "Lily, it's 1 a.m. "I know, but I remembered." A rustling sound, like she was sitting up in bed. "The music box. When I was putting Bunny away tonight, I looked inside the music box. Daddy, there's a bracelet in it. A hospital bracelet. It has writing on it. Ethan sat up straight. What does it say? A pause while she looked. It says a name, and then a room number. Another pause. It says James Reeves, room 914. The air went out of the car. James Reeves. Not Daniel Reeves, the name on the photograph. James. A different name. Same last name. The ghost patient Grace had photographed on the loading dock gurney had a last name that matched another record, which meant it wasn't one fabrication. It was a family, a pattern. Lily, Ethan said very carefully. I need you to put that bracelet somewhere safe. Don't show it to anyone. Can you do that for me? In my sock drawer. Perfect, exactly there. And then go back to sleep. Okay? I'll be at Sandra's by morning. Daddy? Her voice went smaller. You said brave means doing the right thing even when your hands shake. He stopped. He had said that 3 weeks ago when Lily had been scared to tell her teacher about another kid being unkind at lunch. He had crouched down and held her small face and said it, and she had nodded very seriously and walked into school. She had held on to it. Of course she had. Lily held on to everything that mattered. Yeah, Bug, he said. I said that. Are your hands shaking? He looked at his hands in the dim light of the back seat. They were steady. Completely, entirely steady. And somehow, that was more emotional than if they had been shaking. They're not, he said. Go to sleep. Okay. A pause. I love you to the edge of everything. Me too, he said. Me too. He hung up. Claire had heard. She glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but didn't ask. Nora opened her eyes. James Reeves, Ethan said. There's a hospital bracelet in Lily's music box. Grace put it there. The name is James Reeves, room 914. Not Daniel. James. Same last name. Grace photographed Daniel Reeves on a gurney. Now there's a bracelet for James Reeves with the same room number. He looked at Nora. Are there 2 Reeves patients in the ghost files? Nora turned around in her seat. Her face had changed, the specific change of someone who has just connected something they'd seen without understanding. I pulled the billing files for any patient with the name Reeves 8 weeks ago, she said. There was one entry, Daniel Reeves pediatric cardiac procedure, but, she pressed her fingers to her mouth. The billing code on Daniel Reeves's file was for an adult procedure. I flagged it as a data entry error and moved on. I should have. It wasn't an error, Ethan said. James Reeves is an adult. Daniel Reeves might be his son, or his father, or another member of a family that someone needed to make disappear. He thought about Grace's words in the notebook. Someone was on that gurney. I don't know what happened to them. This is bigger than fraud. The ghost patients weren't just accounting constructs. At least some of them were real people who were brought through that hospital under false identities, and then he stopped. Because the next word was one he wasn't ready to say out loud in a moving car at 1 a.m. without more evidence. Claire said it anyway. Disposed of, she said. Flat. Clinical. The voice of someone forcing themselves to look directly at a thing. The silence lasted the length of 2 city blocks. We need to get that bracelet to Delgado tonight, Ethan said. Sandra's house, Claire said. Sandra's house. Tid. Sandra did not ask questions when they arrived at 1:20 a.m. She opened the door in her robe, looked at the 3 people on her porch, took in the particular quality of their expressions, and said, Lily's asleep in the guest room. Whatever you need from her room, go get it. I'll make tea. Ethan got the bracelet from the sock drawer without waking Lily. He stood in the doorway of the guest room for 30 seconds, just watching his daughter sleep. Her hair spread across the pillow, one arm around Bunny. Her face completely unguarded in the way only sleeping children's faces are. Completely perfectly safe for this one moment. He pulled the door shut softly and brought the bracelet to Claire. She photographed it 6 times from different angles, sent every photo to Delgado, and called her immediately after. Delgado picked up on the first ring. "I see it," she said. "I'm cross-referencing right now against county records. Give me 4 minutes." They waited. Sandra brought tea. Nobody drank. Nora sat at the kitchen table, with her arms wrapped around herself. Claire paced 6 steps in each direction, phone pressed to her ear. Then Delgado's voice changed. "James Reeves, age 53, reported missing by his family 14 months ago. Last known location, and this is in the county missing persons file, which is public record, the area around Mercy General Hospital. 14 months ago. 1 month before Grace started finding the ghost files. 1 month before Grace started being afraid. He went into that hospital under a false patient identity," Ethan said. His voice was very quiet. "And he never came out. There may be others," Delgado said. "If they built the infrastructure once, they used it more than once. This is Mr. Miller. This is not a billing fraud story anymore." "I know," Ethan said. "I'm going to need to make calls. The state attorney's office, the FBI field office in Newark. This is federal jurisdiction. The second it involves—" She stopped, chose her words. "The second it involves what I think it involves." "Make the calls," Ethan said. "But publish first. Publish tonight. Because the people who did this know we were in that room, and they are not going to wait for business hours to clean it up." A beat. "I can have the initial story live in 40 minutes. Just the billing fraud and the ghost patients. I can't publish the Reeves connection without verification from a second source." "What do you need?" "The county missing persons report is already a second source," she said. "I have it, and I have your source on record, meaning Claire, and I have the anonymous financial documentation, meaning Nora's upload, and I have photographs of physical evidence. That's enough for the fraud story tonight, and I can update with Reeves as verification comes in." A pause. 40 minutes. Don't go anywhere you can't be reached." "I'll be right here," Ethan said. He hung up, looked at Claire and Nora. 40 minutes, he said. Nora exhaled. It was a long, deep exhale, the kind that has been held for months. Then Claire's phone rang, her regular phone, not the prepaid. She looked at the screen. Her face went very still. "It's Mark," she said. Nobody moved. "Answer it," Ethan said. She answered. "Put it on speaker. Set it on the kitchen table between them." Mark Ellison's voice filled Sandra's kitchen, smooth and unhurried, like a man calling about a scheduling conflict. "Claire, I'm assuming you've had a productive evening." "I've had an honest one," she said. "Which is more than I can say for the past 2 years." That's a complicated word, honest. A pause. "I want to offer you an alternative to whatever you're planning. Simple terms. You return what was taken from the archive. Mr. Miller backs away from the narrative he's been building. And we handle the billing irregularities through an internal review process quietly, appropriately, with proper accountability." Another pause. "Your career survives. His daughter's medical coverage continues without interruption. And this stays inside the institution where it belongs." Ethan looked at Claire. She looked back at him. "Lily's coverage," Ethan said very quietly. Not to Ellison, to himself. He had heard it, the same threat Grace had heard. The same lever. Stay quiet, or the child pays. They had used it on Grace. Grace had stayed quiet, and they had killed her anyway. Claire leaned toward the phone. "Mark," she said, "I want you to understand something. I'm not going to take that offer. And the reason I'm not going to take it is not because I'm brave. It's because I've seen what happens to the people who do take it." Her voice was level. "You offered Grace the same terms, didn't you? Quiet down, protect the family, let the institution handle it." A pause. "And then you killed her anyway. So no. I'm not interested in your terms." Silence on the line. When Ellison spoke again, the smoothness was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. Just slightly. The particular shift of a man recalculating. "You're making an accusation you can't support." "I'm making an accusation I have a photograph to support," she said. Loading dock. 2:14 a.m. 17 months ago. You and a gurney. She paused. James Reeves says hello, or he would if anyone knew where he was. The line went dead. Claire set the phone down. He's going to run, Nora said. He's going to try, Ethan said. He won't get far enough. Delgado's story goes live in. He checked the time, 31 minutes, and the second it does his name is the first one in print. He could still move against Lily, Nora said quietly. The insurance threat. He threatened it as a lever to keep us quiet, Ethan said. The second this is public using it becomes evidence of witness tampering. He's a corrupt man, not a stupid one. He looked at his phone at the time at the kitchen of his neighbor's house where his daughter slept 8 feet away. He's done. 29 minutes. He stood up and walked down the short hallway to the guest room door. He didn't open it. He just stood there with his hand flat against the wood, feeling the solidity of it. On the other side, Lily was asleep. Bunny tucked under her arm, breathing slow and even, completely unaware that in this moment in Sandra's kitchen, 3 people were watching a clock count down toward the moment when her mother's truth would become too large and too public to bury. Grace had written, "Protect the truth, not because it brings me back, because it keeps them from burying someone else." He pressed his hand against the door. "I've got it, Grace," he said. Very quiet, just for her. "I've got it." 17 minutes later, Claire's prepaid phone buzzed. A link. Delgado's publication. The headline read, "Mercy General Fraud Millions Stolen from Children's Charity Fund Board Member Named in Forged Approvals and Ghost Patient Scheme." By the time the sun came up, it had been shared 40,000 times. By mid-morning, 2 federal agents were at Mark Ellison's door. By noon, he was in custody. And in Sandra's guest room, Lily Miller slept through all of it peaceful and unhurt, and entirely safe with a stuffed rabbit under her arm and her mother's last gift to her father in a sock drawer 3 feet away. The truth had gotten out, not cleanly, not without cost, but out wide and public and impossible to take back, which was exactly what Grace had needed it to be. The weeks after the story broke were not quiet. Ethan had expected something. Relief, maybe. The particular exhale that comes after a long-held breath. What he got instead was noise. Constant, relentless noise. His phone rang until he turned it off. His name was in 14 news cycles in 6 days. 2 television vans parked outside his house on the second morning, and Sandra brought Lily out the back door and took her to school through the alley, while Ethan stood in his living room watching the vans through the window and thinking about how Grace would have hated this. She had been a private person in the bone-deep way of people who do important things quietly. She would have hated the cameras. She would have made Ethan tea and said very practically that the noise was the price, and they should pay it without complaining, and it would pass. He made himself tea. He paid the price. He didn't complain. The federal investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The FBI field office in Newark had apparently been building a parallel case on 2 of the shell vendor companies for 8 months, unconnected to Grace, unconnected to Mercy General, following a separate thread through a money laundering network that had its roots in 3 different states. When Delgado's story landed their thread and Grace's thread turned out to be the same rope. The cases merged. The investigation expanded. What had begun as a hospital billing fraud became something considerably larger and considerably uglier, and Ethan learned about each new development the same way everyone else did through the news, through Delgado's follow-up pieces, through the particular numbness that comes from realizing that the thing your wife died for was even worse than you knew. Mark Ellison did not get bail. His attorney argued strenuously. The judge looked at the flight risk assessment, looked at the evidence of offshore accounts in 2 countries, looked at the photograph from the loading dock and said no. 3 board members resigned within 48 hours of the story breaking. 2 more were subpoenaed by the end of the week. The head of medical records, the one whose son-in-law managed the shell companies, was arrested on a Tuesday morning, and his arrest photo was on the front page of the regional paper, and Ethan saw it on his phone while he was making Lily's lunch, and he stood there for a long moment, looking at it and feeling something that was not satisfaction, and not relief, and not grief exactly. Something more like recognition. The recognition of a thing finally being correctly named. On the 9th day, Claire called him. Not the prepaid. Her real phone. His real phone the ordinary way. Two people who have been through something extraordinary together return to ordinary communication. "I resigned this morning," she said. He had been expecting it. "How did it go?" Quietly. "I wrote a letter. I cleared my desk. I spoke to HR for 40 minutes about the transition protocol." A pause. "Then I sat in my car in the parking garage for about 20 minutes and didn't do anything." "That sounds right," he said. "I should have resigned 14 months ago," she said. "The day Grace walked into my office. I should have taken what she brought me and burned the building down that afternoon." Her voice was even not self-pitying the way she always was, even when delivering verdicts on herself. "I didn't. I calculated. I protected my position. I told myself I could do more good from inside than outside, which is what people tell themselves when they're afraid." "You did the work at the end," Ethan said. "The end barely counts, Ethan. Grace did the work. Nora did the work. I showed up when it was already built." A pause. "I'm not looking for absolution. I just want you to know that I know." "I know you know," he said. "You told me in the car. 3 times. I'll probably tell you a few more times before I'm done. I'll listen every time," he said, and he meant it. Not because he had forgiven her entirely, that was a more complicated accounting that he was still doing, but because he understood that people who are genuinely reckoning with themselves need to be heard in the reckoning, not just in the resolution. "I'm starting something," she said. "A nonprofit. Hospital Billing Transparency Patient Advocacy Audit Support for Families Fighting Medical Debt, a Whistleblower Support Fund." A pause. "I have the connections and the institutional knowledge. I might as well use them for something that doesn't require me to look away." "Grace would approve," Ethan said. A longer pause. "Do you think so?" "She would call it practical," he said. She was very big on practical. Claire made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something adjacent to a laugh that she hadn't quite gotten to yet. "There's money coming," she said. "From the civil recovery, the fraud settlement. The federal case is going to claw back a significant portion of what was stolen from the charity fund. I've been working with the prosecutors on a victim restitution framework. Donors who can be identified will be contacted. And..." She stopped. Started again more carefully. "The families of James Reeves and the others. Whatever was done to them, and whoever else went through that loading dock. They deserve to know. They deserve every dollar. They deserve more than money," Ethan said. "Yes," she said. "They do. But money is what the law can give them, so that's where we start." He thought about the mother who had written in memory of my daughter Emma on a donation form. The $40,000 that had gone to a parking garage in Newark. He thought about what it would mean for that woman to get a phone call to be told that someone had found it, that it had been recovered, that Emma's name had not been entirely wasted on the wrong people. He didn't say any of that to Claire. She knew it already. It was why she was building the nonprofit. "Keep me updated," he said, "on the organization." "I will." Another pause. "How are you genuinely?" He thought about it honestly, which was what she was asking for. "Some days I'm okay," he said. "Some days I open the wrong cabinet and there's something of Grace's, and it's like the first week again. Lily asked me last night if Mommy could see the story on the news wherever she is." He exhaled. "I didn't know what to say. I said I thought she probably could. Lily said good because she wanted Mommy to know that Daddy was brave." Claire was quiet for a moment. "She's right," she said simply. "I had a good map," he said. Nora became a whistleblower advocate. It happened the way significant things often happen, not as a decision exactly, but as a series of small steps that only reveal their direction when you look back at them. She gave a deposition, then an interview, then a second interview. Then a hospital administrator in another state contacted Delgado, asking if there was anyone who could advise a staff member who had found billing irregularities and didn't know how to come forward safely. Delgado gave them Nora's number. The call lasted 2 hours. The staff member, a woman named Patricia in a hospital in Ohio, had been sitting on her evidence for 11 months, too scared to move. By the end of the call, she had a legal contact, a documentation strategy, and a plan. 3 weeks later, she went to the state attorney's office, with everything organized in a binder that Nora had helped her build remotely over video calls. "I didn't know this was what I was going to do," Nora told Ethan the first time they met for coffee after everything settled. Real Coffee, the green awning place on Birch Street, which they chose deliberately because naming things matters. "But it turns out I'm good at it, helping people who have seen something and don't know if anyone will believe them." "Grace would have called you before she called me," Ethan said. "If she'd had you from the beginning." "She had me," Nora said. "She just found me 3 weeks too late." She wrapped both hands around her cup. "I think about that a lot. What would have been different? Whether any of it would have been different." "I used to do that," Ethan said. "Run the alternate versions. What if she'd told me earlier? What if I'd noticed she was scared? What if the right people had listened the first time?" He paused. "I don't run them as much now, because they all end the same way. Grace found the truth. The truth exists. What we do with it is the only variable we ever actually had." Nora looked at him. "You sound different than you did in the coffee shop that morning." "I was different," he said. "That morning I was still trying to figure out how to survive the day. Now I'm—" He thought about it. "Now I'm trying to figure out how to build the next one." She nodded. She understood that distinction in the particular way of someone who had made the same transition. "Patricia sends her regards," Nora said. "From Ohio. She said to tell you that your wife's notebook saved her job." She read the summaries in Delgado's third piece and realized that what she had was the same pattern. She recognized it because Grace had documented it so completely that anyone who looked knew what to look for. Ethan set down his cup. Grace's notebooks. The composition covers the colored ink, the stars, and the margins. Circulating in some form, summarized, referenced, documented through federal filings and investigative journalism, and now the hands of a woman in Ohio named Patricia, who had spent 11 months scared and alone with what she knew. Grace had been dead for 15 months, and her work was still moving. He paid for the coffee. He left a good tip. He walked out into the ordinary morning and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing. He quit the hospital 4 months after the story broke. The decision came without drama. He woke up one morning, made Lily's breakfast, drove her to school, came home and sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and understood with complete clarity that he was not going to go back to that building. Not because of trauma, or not only because of trauma, but because that chapter had an ending, and he had reached it, and going back would be like trying to live in a house whose architecture no longer fit the person he had become. He had always been good with his hands. He had a neighbor 2 streets over, older man retired named Gus, who had been trying to restore a 1940s craftsman house for 3 years and was losing the battle with the original woodwork. Ethan started helping him on weekends, then on weekdays, then started taking other jobs through Gus's network. Old houses. Houses that needed someone patient enough to understand what they had been before they could figure out what they needed to be. He found to his own surprise that he was very good at it. Lily told her class that her daddy fixed broken things and made them beautiful again. Her teacher sent Ethan a note saying Lily had given a 3-minute presentation about mortise and tenon joints that the other second graders had found either fascinating or baffling. She couldn't quite tell which. He pinned the note to the kitchen bulletin board. Right next to Lily's drawing of the family, 3 figures, one larger one, small one, in what appeared to be a cloud formation above the other 2, with a star next to it, which Lily had made 4 months ago, and which Ethan had not been able to take down, not because it hurt him, but because it was accurate. Grace was there. She was just there differently now. The morning they went to the cemetery, Lily decided entirely on her own what to bring. Ethan had asked gently the night before if she wanted to bring flowers. Lily had thought about it with the focused seriousness she brought to all important questions and said, "I want to bring something Mommy would actually like. Flowers just die. She would think that was inefficient. Grace had used the word inefficient to describe things she found pointlessly sad. Lily had filed it away apparently, and was now deploying it with complete accuracy. What would she actually like? Ethan asked. Lily thought. Something funny, she said. Because Mommy laughed at everything, even the stuff that was also sad. She paused. She said that was the trick. You can cry and laugh at the same time if you let yourself. Ethan looked at his daughter. 8 years old now. The age Grace had been when her own mother taught her to make pancakes. Grace had told him that story on their second date, had told it with the specific warmth of a memory that has been carried carefully for a long time. She was right, Ethan said, about the trick. Lily brought a keychain. Specifically, a small rubber keychain shaped like a pancake with a face on it, smiley absurd. The kind of thing that costs $2 at a gift shop checkout and has no practical value whatsoever. She had found it at a school fair the previous weekend and bought it with her own money and said nothing about her plans for it. She placed it at the base of the headstone with both hands very deliberately and stepped back. She would laugh, Lily said. She absolutely would, Ethan said. She'd say it was inefficient to buy a keychain for someone who doesn't have keys anymore. Lily tilted her head. But she'd still laugh. She'd laugh first, Ethan said. Then say it was inefficient. Lily smiled. It was Grace's smile, the same curve, the same particular quality of warmth that arrived faster than you expected. Every time it appeared on Lily's face, Ethan felt it like a hand on his shoulder. Steady. Present. Not painful anymore. Just true. He took out his phone. He had not played the voicemail in 3 weeks, which was the longest he'd gone since that first morning in Lily's room. He had played it differently over the months, sometimes in grief, sometimes in anger, sometimes simply to hear her voice the way you put on a song that means something. Today felt like the right morning to play it one more time outside with the sun on the headstone and a rubber pancake keychain at the base of it, and his daughter standing beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her. He pressed play. Grace's voice came through the speaker. Warm, a little breathless. The voice she used when she was trying to be brave. Ethan, if you're hearing this, don't trust the hospital. And don't let them take Lily. Then the recording he had found later, the one Nora had recovered from Grace's encrypted backup, the full message she had recorded the week before she died, which the federal investigators had authenticated, and which Delgado had quoted in her final piece, the last piece in the series, the one that ran under the headline, "The Woman Who Documented Her Own Murder." Grace's voice continued fuller now, more like herself. Protect the truth, Ethan. Not because it brings me back, because it keeps them from burying someone else. The voicemail ended. Lily reached up and took his hand. She didn't say anything. She just held on with both of hers the way she had when she was small and crossing a street, total, trusting completely without reservation. He did not cry. He had cried for Grace in the garage with her notebooks in the car, with Claire in the kitchen in the dark, in the weeks after the story broke, when the exhaustion finally outran the adrenaline and left him with nothing but the simple fact of her absence. He had cried enough to know that crying was not the only thing you could do with grief. You could also build with it. Carry it forward. Let it make you more precise about what mattered. He squeezed Lily's hand. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah. Did we do the right thing?" He looked at the headstone, at the pancake keychain, at his daughter's face turned up toward his in the morning light, Grace's eyes asking Grace's question in the voice of the person Grace had loved most completely. "We did," he said. "We really did. Even when your hands shake." "Mine weren't shaking," he said. "Because yours weren't, and because Mommy left us a very good map." Lily considered this. She was good at maps, she said. She was good at everything that was organized. She was, he said. She would have been good at this too, Lily said, at being remembered right. Ethan Miller stood at his wife's grave on a quiet morning with his daughter's hand in his, and understood that this exact thing was what Grace had been protecting when she was afraid. Not just their safety, not just their future, this particular morning. This particular light, the ability of a small girl to stand in the sun and say her mother's name without flinching. Grace had bought this with everything she had. The least he could do was live in it fully. He had gone back to Grace's closet 6 days after the story broke, not dramatically, not as a gesture, just quietly on a Tuesday morning while Lily was at school. He had opened the door, stood there long enough to feel all the things there were to feel, and then he had taken the clothes to a donation center. Not the robe. He kept the robe. He washed it and folded it, and put it in the cedar chest at the foot of the bed where Grace had kept her good things, the things she was saving. That felt right. The robe was a good thing. It deserved to be kept well. He had deleted the staged photograph, the one from that first morning, whatever it had captured, of a night he still didn't fully remember, without ceremony. One tap. Gone. It had been evidence of something done to him, not something he had chosen, and he refused to preserve it. The music box he kept on his own dresser now. He had fixed the mechanism himself 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon following a tutorial, the kind of careful, close work that turned out to suit him. It played the full lullaby now all the way through whenever Lily opened it, which she did most mornings before school. He did not think of it as haunting anymore. He thought of it as continuity. The small thread that ran from Grace through Lily and into the ordinary mornings, the breakfasts, the shoes with the star buckles, the spelling tests, and the bad days and the good ones, the entirely ordinary life that Grace had died to protect and that Ethan was committed with everything he had to living. He turned away from the headstone. Lily was already walking back toward the car, narrating something to Bunny about why the pancake keychain had been the right choice and not the flowers, the argument apparently ongoing and vigorous. He took one last look at the headstone. "I've got her," he said. Just that, just quietly. "I've got her." He walked back to his daughter. The truth was out. Grace's name was on federal court documents, on Delgado's Pulitzer-nominated series, on the whistleblower advocacy framework that Nora was building in 3 states, on the lips of a woman in Ohio named Patricia, who had been brave because she learned from someone else's bravery. The people who had tried to bury Grace's truth alongside Grace herself were in custody, under investigation, facing the particular accountability of people who built their safety on the assumption that no one would look closely enough. Someone had looked. Someone had always been going to look. Because Grace Miller had spent the last months of her life making sure of it, leaving maps in composition notebooks, hiding bracelets in music boxes, recording voicemails on phones tucked in shoeboxes, trusting that the people she loved were brave enough to follow the trail she left them. She had been right about that. She had been right about everything that mattered. And on a quiet morning at the edge of everything, her daughter laughed at a pancake keychain, and her husband walked toward the sound of it, and the truth, Grace's truth, hard-won and permanent, and entirely impossible to bury, moved forward into the world and kept going. The way truth does, when someone finally refuses to let it stay silent.